Okay, let's get started. Hi, my name is Jing Song, where I go by JC. I am a content marketing manager at Socedo, and over here with me on this webinar, we also have Adam Hutchinson. He is our demand generation marketing manager here. We're really excited to talk to you today and kind of have a discussion about lead quality, right? So, how do you handle your sales team's objections or questions around lead quality? Here at Socedo, this is something we deal with every single day. And in fact, Adam is the one on the marketing team who works very closely hand in hand with our sales team, with our SDR team, on an ongoing basis to figure out what are the kinds of leads we want to pass off to sales and how do we find those people who are the warm leads. So he really has a lot of insight on this topic and practical experience on this topic. So really excited to have him join us and talk about this. And let's just keep this interactive. During the presentation, if any questions come up, if anything resonates with you or is unclear in this, please just type in your question through the dashboard over here, and we'll just address questions as they come up. And also we'll have some time at the end for just a little bit longer to answer additional questions. All right, I'll turn things over to Adam.
Perfect. Thank you, JC. It's great to be on the webinar. Great to have so many with us. This topic is something that I think about on a daily basis, not always by choice. We have a pretty open plan here at Socedo, and the sales had access to me. And sometimes they use that to complain about their leads, which is fine. I get it. It's not the best leads. But part of my job and our whole marketing team here is to kind of battle this rock and hard place. We need to get these over sales and hit certain volume numbers. At the same time, obviously, we want to close as many deals as possible and keep moving forward. So it's something we think about a lot. But I'm going to go ahead and dive in. So a little bit about me. I've been the demand generation manager here at Socedo for almost a year now. Previously, I was at Networks and Amazon. And give me 1 second. I hear we're having some audio problems. Let me switch to different mic real quick. All right. Let's see. All right, it seems like it's working a little bit better now. Pretty bad audio on your end. Let me know. Okay. All right, bear with me for 1 second. All right, how's that sounding now? Still getting an echo coming through. All right, give me 1 second. All right, how are we doing now? Anyone still hearing a bad echo? All right, a little bit better. Okay, cool. Thank you so much. So, as I was saying, I've been here doing demand gen for a few years now, something I'm super excited about, and I love working closely with the sales team, really from an ops perspective, because there's a lot of efficiencies that we can drive throughout our pipeline, and that's why I'm kind of a Marketo nerd. People know that about me. They call me Mr. Marketo sometimes. I have my certification and everything. And I also work a lot in Salesforce to create our pipeline between marketing and sales and really give sales teams the best leads with the highest quality and the best data they need in order to close the deal. Problem is it doesn't always work, and a lot of this has to come down to definitions. So I think about this idea of kind of decoding objections and coming with a common definition a lot because I travel quite a bit. I go to foreign countries with foreign languages, and I often try to learn those languages before I go to a new country. And so actually just earlier this year, back in June, I went to Rotterdam in the Netherlands, and they speak Dutch over there. And, I know a lot of French, but in Dutch is somewhat similar, so I spent a few months studying Dutch and learning at least the common phrases and everything so I could get by over there. And it was going okay when I was over there. Then on the second to last day of my trip, I visited the National Photography Museum. Beautiful museum, beautiful. But they were under construction. And so the main entrance to the museum was actually closed, and there was a secondary entrance. So I got my ticket, and I was going through, and I tried to get into the exhibit. And it's this glass door. And so I'm pushing on the door, and it won't open. So I start pulling on the door, and it won't open. But there's this very clear sign that says Omleiden, and then there's an arrow pointing to the door. So I'm like, this must be it. So I keep pushing on it and pulling on it. And then this little museum worker comes up to me and has to poke me and point me in the other direction. I'm like, no, I'm trying to go in here. I have my ticket. I'm waving my ticket. I'm pushing on the door, and I can't get through. And this person keeps saying, Omleiden to me. And I'm like, I know. I'm trying to get into the exhibit. Well, it turns out Omleiden means reroute, not the route. And so it means it was being redirected because it was under construction. I couldn't go through that door. I had to go through a different door. So that one definition on that one word was enough to make me look like the stupid American in the Netherlands not understanding how to go through a museum door. So common definitions are important, and that's something we're definitely going to talk about today on this webinar. It's not that marketing and sales hate each other, it's just that they don't talk very well with each other. And it can cause a lot of tension. And so we're going to talk about why common definitions and what the sorts of metrics we need to look at as a team are and how they help actually our conversion rates throughout the pipeline. Then we're going to hit on some common concerns that we've seen here at Socedo and also that I've heard from some of our customers that impacts both quality and quantity. Obviously on the marketing side, we want to send over as much as possible, but sales really only wants the best leads. So we're going to talk about kind of that tension there and what are some strategic steps we can take in order to fulfill the pipeline. Then we're going to talk about the different objections that I typically hear from the sales team and what it means for me as a marketer. There's I think we're going to hit on 8 of them in this webinar, and there are actually specific steps that I take when I hear certain things coming back from sales. We're going to talk about how we measure lead quality, and most importantly, we're going to talk about actual tactics that you can take at the end of this webinar to increase lead volume while still keeping up quality and talking with your sales team in a friendly way instead of an antagonistic way. Cool. So marketing and sales, we've all heard this. There's been a lot of content around this, but marketing and sales doesn't always get along. This whole idea of marketing and sales alignment is still an issue for a lot of organizations. And the simple answer is that lead nurturing takes time. And this is what we talk about on the marketing side of things. Hey, we got great contacts into our database. Now we need to warm them up. They're going to go through the awareness phase, then the education phase, then the evaluation phase, and then we'll pass them over to sales. For a salesperson, though, there's really only one phase, closing the deal. And so that can create a lot of friction because sales wants the leads that are going to close right now. They have their monthly quotas that they need to hit in order to get paid. Whereas on the marketing side of things, we need to build pipeline over time, usually 3-6 months in advance. We're looking at different metrics on each side of the organization. Marketing tends to think in aggregates. We think about, here's the 500 leads from the 10 to 100 employee segment in our database located in the U.S. and how did they convert in the pipeline? Whereas sales is looking at, Jane Smith over at Killer Infographics had this objection or wasn't ready to talk to me yet. Well, I'm sorry, I don't know who Jane Smith is. She's 1 out of 500 to me on the marketing side, but to a salesperson it really matters. And so that's why it can create a lot of tension because literally what I get is I'll have salespeople on our team send me Slack messages, little messages saying, hey, how did this lead get over the line? They're not ready yet. And I'm like, I don't know. I can look into all of our lead scoring campaigns and tell you, but I'm a little more concerned about the fact that you've only created 20% of your leads and opportunities so far this month. Can we talk about that and not this one specific lead? And then, we each have kind of separate concerns. And so, on the marketing side, we care a lot about following up with leads. Every lead should be touched. If you're a Marketo user, you probably know the phrase, no lead left behind. Every lead should always be in a program somewhere. We should be nurturing them. Even if they're an old, dead lead, we should be sending them some content on a, infrequent basis to keep them interested. Whereas sales, they want the opposite of that. They want to talk to new leads. They want to talk to highly qualified leads. And so their concerns are, hey, this lead's old, this lead's badly qualified, this lead didn't watch our webinar, it's been 3 months since they even came through. Whereas marketing's like, hey, this lead, they went cold because you stopped following up with them. So there's a little bit of a disconnect there when we talk about priorities. But at the end of the day, these two teams are mutually dependent, right? Sales obviously relies on marketing for their pipeline of inbound leads and qualified leads. And marketing relies on sales to know which leads should we be actually sending over. How do we qualify our leads? What are the, how do we close these leads? What content is performing best in order to get them into the deals? And what segments should we be going after in order to grow our business over time? And so we need both perspectives, but we've got to be able to talk in common terms. And so that's why it starts with definitions. So internally, we break our MQL definition over into two camps. And so to us, an MQL is anyone who's qualified in order to go over to sales, either straight to an account executive or a sales development representative. Anyone who kind of meets that qualification, we consider an MQL here. And we break it out into two ways. We have a demographic scoring model and a behavioral scoring model. So our demographic scoring model looks at things like, where are they located? Are they in the country that we can actually do business? Is their company, mid to large size, or just small company? Is it a one-person company? What industry are they in? We even look at things like, what marketing platform are they using? Our Socedo platform integrates with Marketo, HubSpot, and Salesforce. So anyone who has one of those platforms is a highly qualified lead for us. Someone who has Eloqua is still a great lead. They can still use our product. But someone who doesn't have any marketing automation at all, they're going to have a hard time finding value with us. Not that they can't, but they need to fit other characteristics as well. So that's why we've created a demographic scoring model across these different fields in order to say, okay, you got to at least meet 2 or 3 of these in order to get over the line. So if you're in the U.S. and you're a VP of marketing and you're in the tech industry, we definitely want to talk to you, even if you don't have any sort of marketing automation system. Or if you're a marketing coordinator at an insurance industry, well, it's hard for us to close. But if you have Marketo and it's a larger company, we definitely still want to talk to you as well. Then on top of that, we have a behavioral scoring model. And so this is what's the progressive action that they've taken over time in order to qualify to talk to you right now. So demographic is like a gate. It's like, yeah, we can send you over, but behavioral is telling us we're ready right now for the sales team to reach out. And so we look at a wide variety of metrics. We look at email clicks. We look at website visits. We look at who attended this webinar. Everyone on this webinar right now is going to get a lead score after this. Lucky you. We look at social media activities. So both on the content that we're promoting and as well as organic social activities. So for example, if someone clicks on one of the links that we shared from one of our social accounts, they'll get 5 points added to their lead score. But we also look at things that are relevant to our industry. So if anyone interacts with the Marketo Twitter handle, they're also going to get 5 points, but regardless of whether or not they engage with our content. If they follow us on Twitter, that's highly qualified, so they actually get 10 points. If they're talking to one of the influencers in the industry, we'll also increase their lead scores, regardless of whether or not we promoted that content. And that's really great because it allows us to kind of expand our audience on social media that we can actually engage with and do lead scoring off of. And so we do this with our own platform as well, which is and it's pretty useful. We've been able to get leads over the line because they were engaging with the right influencers and the right topics on social media. And it was the right time to reach out, even though they hadn't downloaded our content or come onto a webinar yet. It was still a good lead, and they were able to get into an opportunity. And so how do we actually do this? Well, we got to do some data work. So for those of you who don't like math, I'm sorry for the next 3 slides, but it's super important. I promise it's not that difficult, so we're going to go through it together. So the first is I want to break down what are the values that I can actually measure in order to build my best qualified lead model. And so there's a couple of characteristics that I think about when I'm building this model. One is, are there actually distinct sections? So if all the leads I'm generating are from 100 plus employee companies, it doesn't make a ton of sense for me to break it down into increments of 10 or 5. Or if they're all coming from, if I only sell to very small companies, again, the number of employees at a company isn't going to be very meaningful to me, so I might not measure this in my lead scoring model. But as you can see at Socedo, we have a pretty wide spread in terms of the company sizes that we do business with, so this is one that I can break down. Similarly, if I can really only sell to United States companies, it doesn't make sense for me to do any sort of lead scoring or qualification on different countries. All I know is either you're in the U.S. or you're not, so I don't need to do a full analysis on it. But this one we can see it's fairly distributed. We have a pretty good breakdown in terms of different company sizes, so this is definitely a good one. And also, can I get this data? So, one that we know is really valuable for us here at Socedo is if someone currently has a piece of content that they're promoting, that's really great for them to jump into a trial of Socedo right away because we can drive leads to that content. The problem is, from a marketing perspective, I have no way to actually capture that into a field that I can send to the sales team. I could ask it on a form, are you currently promoting content? I could try to get it in another way, but that data tends to be kind of messy, and so I can't really capture it. So even though I know kind of instinctively that those are good leads for us, I can't really include that into my qualification model. But things like company size, things like marketing platform use, things like location, industry, job title, all of those are baked into our qualification model. And so first I just kind of break it down and say, all right, who do we currently have that we've been sending over? So these totals are real data, but I've kind of meshed up the actual real numbers here as we go through, just to use some sample data, but the actual proportions are the same across the board here. So it's fairly real data that we're looking at. So after I have my breakdown of, okay, I want to see company size, and I want to see it by different groupings in terms of number of employees, then how are these actually converting? So I sent, these hundreds or so in each segment over to the sales team. How many of them became an SQL? And to us, an SQL is an opportunity was created. The salesperson found value in this. The lead expressed interest. We wanted to create a deal off of it. So they became a qualified lead. We created an opportunity in Salesforce. I want to see how many people actually got to that stage. And as you can see already, there's some pretty clear differences, right? If we have people at very small companies, independent, these are mostly probably one-person shops, maybe consultants or something, a lot lower bar or a lot lower amount are getting into opportunities than at some of these larger companies. And this isn't shocking to me at all. This is what I would have expected when I pulled this data. Because as you can see, when people actually have teams, they probably have a dedicated marketing person so they can actually use our platform. If they have larger companies, they might even have a dedicated social media person, so someone actually has time to do a trial or evaluate our platform. And of course, you get to these really large companies, we typically do start to see a dip once we get to the very, very large companies, and that's because, hey, these are large companies. They take time. Those are large teams. There's usually a big process, a procurement process, multiple approvals needed even just to start a trial. So that's why we see this dip down from 70 to 62 here. But still, as we can see, much better than what we were looking at the smaller companies. But I don't want to stop there because I want to see how they move through the pipeline. It might be that, okay, sure, we can get a decent amount of these small companies into opportunities, but do they even have the budget to buy our platform? Are they even going to close into new customers? As we can see here, there's a pretty big break at the 20-person employee count. So obviously, we're not really closing any of these smaller deals, these one-person shops. Now, we have some of them, and these are some of our customers. In fact, they're some of our really good customers. So again, like I say, I want to break this down by different segments. Just because you're a one-person employee, if you're in the tech industry and you have Marketo and you meet some of our other qualifications, you might actually be a really great customer for us. But in general, if this is all we know about you, it's probably not enough to get you over the line. Over here, I definitely want some other indicators. You better be engaged with us, be in the right industry for me to sell to you. But once we get into the 20-plus employee range, this is where, hey, these are really great fits for us. Anywhere from 20 employees up to 500 employees. This is really our sweet spot, and I want to send all of those over to sales. Once we get larger than that, again, we're talking about large companies that take a long time to close, and also maybe we need to look at certain industries. Maybe we have some in here that just aren't the best fits. So this is something we need to break down by different sectors. Then that's not even enough, right? So it's great to see how many deals do we win, how many new customers do we have. But at the end of the day, we all need to be driving towards revenue. Because guess what? These are the numbers that sales cares about. And so in marketing, these are the numbers that we need to care about as well, because this is how we grow the business. So if we look at the total revenue here, I mean, no surprise, right, that as we get to larger companies, revenue starts to increase. Now what's really interesting is you see, oh, we have this huge bump here in the 21 to 50 employee range. Well, part of that is because that's a larger range than 10 to 20. But also we're sending more of those people over from the marketing side. We have more of them in our pipeline, and they're closing at higher rates. It's a really great sweet spot for us. So that's cool to see. And then, of course, no surprise here that at the larger companies, we see this huge lift up again. And so, of course, I look at ASP as really a great indicator for these different segments, because that tells me if I send this lead over, here's how much revenue per deal we could be generating, and this salesperson is going to want to drive towards, and it's worth our time to try to close. And so, I mean, again, no surprises that there's a pretty big, jump as we move up these segments here. And again, 21 to 50 seems to still be our sweet spot. So as I do list buys or content promotion programs, lead gen programs, this is the sweet spot that I want to be in for lead gen. And then, of course, again, at this huge enterprise, 500 plus employee size, you might have only closed 11% of them, but the average selling price was $63,000. Now that might be because we had one or two just huge deals in the pipeline, but even that alone is enough for me to say, hey, it's worth it to still consider these really valuable prospects, because look at the difference, almost 10xing on our segments here. So I actually do this by each of our different characteristics. So I do this for company size. Then I also do this exact same regression analysis by industry. I do it by job title. I do it by location. I do it by marketing platform used. Do they use Marketo, HubSpot, Pardot, Eloqua, or something else? And I do this, usually on a 3-month basis, or anytime our leadership wants the data. Sometimes I'll run this a few more times than that, because this is super useful to look at. And this informs how we change our lead scoring model every time we need to change it. And we do make updates fairly regularly on top of this. And so really it's not that difficult. All I look at is I take, out of Salesforce, I take a full report of all the leads that sales has worked. And then I just kind of export that into a spreadsheet, and I say, hey, here's the ones that moved it into the closed won stage, and here's the ASP on each of those. And I create these groupings here. So not that difficult. It only takes me maybe half an hour to an hour each time I need to run this regression analysis across our segments. This is how we make changes to our lead scoring model. So what we've done is we've baked into our demographic scoring model literally just tiers here. So I say anyone who's 20 plus employees, they get 5 points. Anyone who's 10 to 20 gets 3 points. 5 to 9 gets 2 points. And then 0 to 4, we don't give any points for that. And they might still go over if they meet other definitions, but they're going to have to really hit a high qualification bar in other areas in order to get over the line. And so, what's really interesting as we go through this process is, it's not just about the demographic, right? I also do this on behavioral scoring. And so, I look at certain actions, and there's ones that are common to marketing. We talk about, email clicks. That's a really easy one that a lot of marketers track. If someone clicked on our emails, did they become sales leads? Did they become opportunities? Did they close into revenue? And we can track that all the way back. And really, literally all I do is I pull a list of Marketo and I say, how many people clicked an email in the past 90 days? Okay, great. And then I match those, all the way down the funnel with our revenue metrics that we have on the opportunity fields in Marketo. And so not difficult. But so email clicks, that's an easy one. Did they visit a web page? That's an easy one. But then you want to get into other different indicators of intent, because just someone saw some content or clicked on an email doesn't necessarily mean that they're ready to buy right now. But there's certain things that do indicate that, such as social media activities. This one's really interesting. I did one of these analyses across the different actions, and what we found was that, of course, people who attended a webinar, downloaded our white papers, and visited our pricing page, those types of things, were the most qualified. That led to the most deals and the most revenue closed over time, hands down. No surprises there. But then our second best segment were social activities. So people who followed us on Twitter, our brand handle, people who followed our influencers or engaged with them, or tweeted really relevant hashtags like industry conferences. People who did those things are actually more qualified than people who just clicked on an email or visited our webpage. So now we score those higher than those other metrics. 66% of marketers say they want to generate leads from social media, but the majority of them can't even measure the ROI. Which is kind of unfortunate, because as we talk about generating qualified leads for your business, we want to be tracking every activity, not just the ones that we own on our website and our emails, but also paid ads and social media, organic activities, all the way through the funnel. So our own platform does this. We actually can track everyone in the database based off of organic activities on Twitter, append those into Marketo or HubSpot or Salesforce, and then you can actually attribute revenue back to those specific activities. So that's how I run these reports. And of course, if you're generating leads from social in another way, what you want to be doing is consider those activities the same way that you consider email activities and website activities, because you might just find that there are certain indicators in there that indicate quality and readiness better than others. All right. And so, we can optimize for quality all day long and get really specific on who our target customer is. But then, of course, we come into the problem of quantity. Our pipelines just sort of dry up. And we actually faced this issue here at Socedo, I'd say about 4 or 5 months ago. We really narrowed down onto our target persona and our target audience. And we considered those our MQLs, and everything else just kind of got shifted to the side. And so, sure, the conversion rates were really great on the sales side of things, but then what we were seeing was there just weren't enough leads going over. We'd actually over-optimized, and there were other indicators of intent to buy or good fits that we were ignoring because we were only looking at this very, hyper-focused definition. And so we were actually, missing out on opportunities because of that. And so, from the marketing side of things, while we want to stay focused on quality, we also want to make sure that we're opening ourselves up to keep our pipelines full. And so part of this comes down to the way that we generate leads in our systems from the first place. And so, a lot of marketers are using cost per lead programs. So, it might be through a third-party vendor, through a certain website or a publication promoting content. They'll deliver a batch of leads back to us. So, for example, we use a cool service called eMedia that will promote our content, and then they deliver leads back to us based off of that. But we get those in batches. And so the problem is, those will come in sometime during the month, and then they go over to sales, but sales might not need them right then, or they might be dry on pipelines earlier in the month. And by the time they get this batch of leads, maybe they don't have time to work through all of them, and all of a sudden these leads get wasted, and there's a lot of different effects there. And so what we want to do is try to keep our marketing pipeline kind of as evenly spread throughout the month as possible. Certainly with paid ads, we want to make sure we have it consistent, not just kind of promoting things in bursts. Same with our lead gen programs. Events tend to kind of create bottlenecks as well. When we went to the Marketo Summit earlier in the year, we generated hundreds of leads from it, but then they all got passed off to the sales team on that Monday. And then a lot of them never got touched because there were just too many leads. And so instead, we need to nurture them on the marketing side of things, making sure we're trickling leads over to the sales team over time. And then, of course, keep in mind how your database is responding to things. As we run through certain segments in the database, call to actions will stop working as well. If you're going over after different personas, you might have certain content pieces that work really well with one. So, like, for example, content marketers are a really great segment for us. And so, we did some campaigns around content marketing, how to use our platform to drive leads to content. And so it worked really well for a few weeks, and then we ran through that segment, and all of a sudden it wasn't working because the qualified leads in that segment had already gone over to sales. Everyone else wasn't a content marketer anymore in our database, and so we had to shift call to actions. So it's really important to keep a kind of a pulse on where your database is currently and who's in there, because you do have to shift your marketing tactics to make sure you're still providing quality leads over to the sales team over time, even as you run through one segment and move on to the next one. And it's also important just to understand how have you built your database. Do you have what you need in there, who you need in there, the right data in there? And we saw this interesting statistics from salesgenie.com that the average company wastes $20,000 per year per sales rep on bad leads, which is just crazy. That's just great. $20,000 per year per sales rep on bad leads. And now I hope that's not true. I certainly hope that's not true here at Socedo, but it's kind of a scary statistic. And a lot of that comes down to on the marketing side of things, we're pumping our database full with as many leads as possible, and we should be growing our database. But if there are bad leads in there, as over time, we're going to start to send those bad leads over to sales, and all of a sudden, not only does quality go down, but actually the full quantity of what we can send over to sales as a lead starts to decrease. The same report said, on average, the United States loses $600 billion annually on bad leads across all companies and industries. $600 billion annually. I can't even wrap my head around that. Again, I hope that's not true, but that's what Sales Genie had reported. And so it's definitely a problem that people are facing at whatever level. And so, it's this constant tension between filling with quality but also quantity. And so part of that becomes, who are we sending over to sales and can we convert them? So I want to tell another little story from my Rotterdam trip about translations. So we already talked about my kind of goof up with omleiden and knowing the reroute from the door. But at the very last day of the trip, I wanted to get some souvenirs. And so I was going around to some of the different shops around Rotterdam. It's really great. It's a very artistic city. I love Rotterdam. Definitely want to go back. And I was picking up some little art pieces for some of my friends. I was getting some gourmet chocolates and everything. I was so excited. And then I wanted something for myself, a nice little souvenir. So I'm like, I'm going to get a nice T-shirt, just a funny one that I can remember the trip by and wear it once in a while. And so I go into this shop, and of course all the T-shirts have Dutch sayings on them, and I can't read most of them. And so, I'm asking the saleswoman to translate for me as we're going through. And there's this one that says "Zet de Ut not eens on," which literally translates to "turn on the power switch again." I'm like, well, that's a weird one. What does that mean? And she had to explain it to me. Well, it's actually an idiom in the Netherlands that means basically their city is so productive and they have so much industry there, and people are kind of always busy and doing things that basically all you have to do is turn on their power switch to get them going in the morning, which I thought that was really funny because I'm a huge coffee drinker, and basically all it takes is one cup of coffee and I'll get going again. So of course I had to buy the T-shirt, and now you see me wearing it once in a while. But the same thing I think applies between marketing and sales. We might be able to speak the same language, but oftentimes we mean different things when we say them. So things like, hey, we can't sell this industry, or they're not interested right now. Well, that might be true, or it might be something a little more specific. So when I hear a salesperson come to me saying, these leads aren't responsive, they're not responding to my messages, these are bad leads. Well, no, actually they just need more nurturing. So part of that will happen on the marketing side of things. It means this lead source that we sent over was maybe a little premature, so we should send them through some more marketing touches, emails, ads, and social first before sending them sales. It also means sales might need a little more air cover while the leads are over with them. Maybe we need to send them some more marketing pieces while the sales team is working them as well, just to keep Socedo on their radar. When I hear these leads, they don't convert, they don't close into deals, well, guess what? All leads are basically the same when we look at different aggregate levels. So it's not that these leads won't never convert. It just means we need to get more specific with this specific segment. So let's talk about the different assets that the sales team needs and the talk tracks in order to close the deals. So if there's a certain webinar that I'm sending leads over from that aren't converting yet, well, I need to send the sales team more info about what we just talked about on that webinar, so that way they can close the deals and have a relevant follow-up conversation, but also apply it to our own product. So, hey, it's not that we just had a webinar today about sales quality and handling sales team objections to lead quality. It's that we had a webinar today that marketers need qualified leads in their database. So Socedo can actually help provide those qualified leads in their database. When I hear sales teams say, we can't sell this industry, this is a bad fit for us. Sometimes that's true, but more often than not, it just means we haven't sold them yet. A good example, financial industries are really tough for us here at Socedo to sell because there's a lot of regulation. And so when we talk about social media marketing, they're often so regulated that they can't do certain automation on social that our platform provides, which is tough. But there's certain segments within the financial industry that are different. So like personal wealth advisors, believe it or not, are actually great fits for us. We have a couple of those customers. And it's because they perform more like a personal service industry rather than a financial banking industry. And so their needs are a little bit different and their marketing is a little bit different. And so we actually have a lot of case studies right now about other personal service industries, different consultants, lifestyle coaches, HR consultants industries that are kind of one-man shops that perform, marketing in the very same way as these personal wealth advisors. So let's use those same common case studies and tactics with this new industry. So let's find those commonalities there. This person is not the right contact at the company. That's the one I hear a lot because we definitely have personas that we try to sell to, social media managers, the demand gen managers. Sometimes we get someone in there who's, maybe the content marketing manager or maybe just someone who does event marketing at the company. We can definitely sell those, but what if it's someone who's like an account executive or on the sales side of things, sales ops? Well, they don't necessarily need, our solution, our marketing platform. Doesn't mean it's a bad company or a bad contact. It just means we need to get more targeted with who we're bringing into the funnel. So, did this webinar that we promoted via a third party actually end up targeting salespeople instead of marketing people because of the content? Well, let's shift and find either more relevant content to promote or maybe better personas that we can target on different platforms. I hear this person just isn't interested in our solution. Hey, that's a common quality concern. It means probably our behavioral lead scoring model is wrong. So we're getting people over the line too quickly. We're looking at the wrong indicators of interest. We thought that someone who, downloaded this white paper would be a really qualified lead when in case, they were just looking at some topic or something. They weren't actually interested in our solution. So, all right, we got to adjust that. That's a qualified, a good concern to have. This person isn't in our market at all. Like I said, there's certain countries we just can't sell to at Socedo because of language barriers or commerce barriers or whatever it might be. Well, okay, so we shouldn't be sending them over to the sales team, which means our demographic lead scoring model is wrong. It could also be, again, there's certain industries we just can't sell, like highly regulated financial industries. So we shouldn't be counting those as qualified leads. And then finally, this is kind of a tricky one, but data about the lead is just wrong. Like the phone number is wrong, or the email address was wrong, or it said they were at this 5,000 person company, but it was actually a 5-person company. There's a lot of things that could be causing this. I have a different webinar on our website called Managing Marketing Data. Feel free to check it out, and we address some of those issues. A lot of times it's coming in from the data source. So, if that lead data is coming in straight from how you generated the lead, it's a third-party cost per lead program. It's probably one you want to turn off because you shouldn't be getting that bad data into your system. If you're using data enrichment platforms, that's also an issue. You might want to check into which fields you're updating and turn some of those off as well. But when someone says, oh, this is just a bad lead, it's bad data, again, it doesn't mean the lead itself is bad, and so I always check first what's the data, where's it coming from, what fields are being updated there. And so again, we talked about the regression analysis and how I actually kind of build our lead scoring programs in order to create qualified leads. And what we're looking at really on a weekly basis are these different conversion rates. Was the sales team able to actually make contact with them? Did the leads open their emails and respond to their voicemail messages? How many of them moved into opportunities and became deals? Obviously, how many of them closed, and what was the average selling price? If I see any of these start to take a significant dip on a weekly basis, that's a red flag for me. That's when I want to sit down with the sales team and have a conversation. On the flip side of things, if sales starts coming to me complaining about lead quality, but all of these metrics are staying somewhat stable, that gives me fuel to actually push back and say, no, the leads we're sending you are still good because, look, you're still closing the same amount of them. They're still selling, closing at the same price. Maybe there's a little bit more work to get them to the phone. Maybe there's some other issues that we can kind of dive into, give the sales team better assets. But the leads themselves are still good if these metrics remain the same. And so, I like to say I have a halfway open door policy with my sales team. I say halfway open door because I let them come to me with any of their concerns. They can send me a Slack message. They can send me an email. We have a fairly small office. They can walk over to my desk, and they often do, to talk about questions or concerns they have with the leads we're sending over to them. But it doesn't mean they get to just complain or that I'm going to do anything about it necessarily. What it means is we're going to look at the metrics together. And so, if a salesperson comes to me and says, hey, Jane Smith over here is a bad lead, why did she get over the line? I'm not going to look down at the lead by lead level and say, oh, yeah, well, see, Jane watched this webinar, then she clicked on this email, et cetera, she got over the line, she met these characteristics. No, all of that data is in Salesforce. The sales team should be empowered to look at those different metrics themselves. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the aggregate level with them. I'm going to say, hey, look, we sent you specifically 20 leads today, and they came in from these sources, and they met these, these different demographics. We had 50% of them were 20 plus employees and in these industries. And so if we're seeing any concerning things there, like a lot of them are e-commerce, and that's not great for us. All right, well, then let's talk about why we got some e-commerce in our database, and marketing can make an adjustment. Otherwise, let's look at what we have, and okay, these meet our qualifications based off of these different factors. Maybe a couple of them are bad fits in there, but we can disqualify those out. And really, let's focus on the good leads. So I never look lead by lead with the sales team. We always wanted to kind of talk in aggregates and look at the actual metrics themselves. But sometimes it really is just a lead volume problem. So they'll come to me and say, hey, Adam, I got like only 3 leads today, and they were all bad leads. And I look at those numbers, and I say, oh, you're right. They were all in bad industries. So we need to increase the lead volume that we're sending over to sales. And so there's a few ways we can do this without, just completely decimating the quality of what we're sending over. I always start with our database. I say, what do we currently have that's an engaged lead that we could send over right now to the sales team? So I look at different segments. I say, okay, we have, this 10 to 100 plus employees in this region, in this industry, and they downloaded our white papers, or they clicked on our emails, or something happened, right? They took some action. We take it, what's our best converting rates, what do we want to send over, and then we can pass those over to the sales team. So I always start with what we currently have, because usually there's something we can open up. Then from there, I kind of look at what are the quick win campaigns that we can run on our database. So if we have a segment that's really highly qualified, but they're not quite behavioral qualified yet, they haven't quite gotten over the line to go to sales, what's a campaign that we can run right now with a very specific call to action on this specific segment in order to at least kind of pump some more leads into the sales team as a quick win? So, for example, if we have a bunch of content marketers in really great industries right here, but they haven't responded for a while, let's send them an offer, for maybe an extended trial or, a discounted onboarding fee or something in order to use our platform to drive leads to their content. And we know that'll perform really well based off of our average email click-through rates and conversion rates. I can estimate how many leads we're going to send over. It's pretty easy to spin up, and we can run through that segment, no matter where they are kind of in my marketing lead stages. And so we can kind of go through segment by segment in my database and run those campaigns. That's what we do a lot. And I work very closely with the sales team on that. We're pretty agile here. Obviously, we want to build a repeatable pipeline, but sometimes we need to spin up these quick campaigns. Otherwise, we can look outside of our database and generate some new leads. It's kind of like an injection in there. We don't want to just run through our budget just to meet our goals, but there are times where we can open up new programs for a short period of time in order to get more leads over the line. So we look at different cost per lead programs, sponsored content, pay-per-click ads, or honestly, most of the time we just spin up a new Socedo campaign. So we'll say, all right, what's one segment on Twitter that we haven't engaged with yet? Maybe it's a new industry, the HR industry, marketing managers in HR industries. Okay, great. Let's spin up a new Socedo campaign and get some more leads to show interest and get them over the line of sales right away. When we have a lot of customers who are expressing the same kind of concern, that's what we'll often suggest to them. We'll say, hey, look, there's an event coming up in your industry. This hashtag is getting a lot of usage right now. Let's find everyone on Twitter who's using this hashtag, send them a piece of content, and then send them over to your sales team. Obviously this strategy isn't going to last you very long after the conference, but it's a great way to get some more leads over to the sales team right away. And so, by kind of incorporating these different avenues and these different segments that we can go after, we can increase the lead volume without decreasing the quality of our leads. Cool. So thank you for kind of sitting with me through that presentation today. Hopefully it was useful. We will have a couple minutes to answer some questions. And I know one question, of course, is, will the webinar be available on demand? And yes, it will be. So we'll send out an email with the on-demand recording later today. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining us today. Sorry about the audio issues in the beginning, but glad we got that worked out. Definitely join us again for our next webinar. And if you do have some time today, right after this webinar, you can actually go to Socedo.com and start a free trial right away and generate qualified leads for your business. And what we can actually do for you is we can set up that trial for you. So if you go ahead and go to Socedo.com and fill out that form, you'll be directed right to one of our customer experience managers. They can work with you on what is your qualified segment. If you wanted to pass over a batch of leads today to your sales team, what would that segment look like? We can create those buyer personas on social media, target them on Twitter, and actually start generating leads literally today. And then we do have a 7-day free trial as well in order to drive some more leads into your business. But thanks for joining. Definitely reach out if you have any questions. Otherwise, look forward to our next webinar.